so this tutorial is all just going to be about how I did this X-split design on this tumbler, and I'm not going to go into depth on anything about how I epoxied. But I learned this first trick from Brittany Barnes Boutique. So you wrap a piece of paper around your tumbler to kind of get that circumference, and then fold it in half so that you have a perfect halfway point for your tumbler. And I am using some triangles from when I make my V-split tumblers. So I just fold a piece of pattern vinyl in triangles and cut them out. This pattern, I cannot use the side pieces as they have a top and a bottom to them. So I am going to put them together to make this X-split design. And I'm using that piece of paper to find the exact halfway points, and then I fold it in half the other direction to get the exact center for where I'm going to start the very tip point of that pattern vinyl. And I just ended up using one of my Posca markers just to make a little dot to show where that would be. And then I'm going to make sure that it is straight seam on the back side, and I cut this so that it was exactly halfway around the tumbler. So I'm going to pull that tip off, put the paper back on, and then line it up. Once I get it to where I want it to be, I'm just going to use a piece of scrap vinyl because I didn't have my tape down here with me to kind of tack that vinyl into place and hold it still while I remove that piece of paper from the front of the front of that pattern vinyl, and then tack it down. And then I'm just going to roll it onto it and then push that paper backing off. This is a clear pattern vinyl that I got from Gracefully Created. So this tumbler has already been glittered, sanded smooth, and then re-epoxied. And while pushing this down, I realized there was just a little bump sticking up. So I just grabbed my X-Acto knife and trimmed that off. You do not want to have any sanding underneath of this clear pattern vinyl, or you will have that scratch marks show up through it once you epoxy. So just make sure it's fully epoxied and completely smooth. And then I'm going to trim off the excess on the top and the bottom. And since I measured this piece of the vinyl to be exactly halfway around the tumbler, I don't have to measure my other one. I just need to line up that point. I'm going to tack it down again and then peel the backing off. And since the other one is measured, once I roll this one out and have it perfectly lined up, I can just trim off the excess where the two meet up together. And I just use the ridge from the first piece of vinyl as my guide point for where to cut. But some people like to apply an extra layer of like masking tape or painter's tape on there so that you have that ridge. This pattern was perfect for this design, as you can't hardly tell where that split is once it's all laid down, which is super nice. I mean, you could still kind of see it, but it blends very well together. Once I have all my vinyl laid down, I'm going to go on and decide where I want to place my decal. And for this one, I'm just peeling it off. This is a clear cast, and I decided to put it on the bottom part because I later do a drip on the top, which I will not show during this tutorial. After I've decided where I want the decal to go, I'm just going to use a couple more pieces of that vinyl, scrap vinyl, to kind of tack it down so that it stays straight, and then I'll peel off the back and just push it down. If you get any air bubbles in these, you can just use your X-Acto knife and kind of pop them and then just squeeze it out. I did not trim this one up before I put it on, and since it overlaps the vinyl there, I'm just kind of cut off that extra clear part just because I don't want it to show up at all under epoxy or when I put on my stripes next. After my vinyl is all on, I'm going to move on to my pinstripes, and I'm starting with black, and I just made a rectangle in my silhouette and did about a 0.2 by 11.5 inches. And I want this to come to points on that back side at the top and bottom. So I don't want to line it up with my vinyl. I did not pre-cut the vinyl exactly to the size I wanted, so I don't have a great method for this. I am just eyeballing it. They will cross exactly in the front where they meet up, and then I just bring them around evenly to that top and the bottom so that they will make a perfect little triangle point down there. Once you get the first one on, the second one's a lot easier because you can kind of see how much they overlapped on that vinyl. And so you just try to make it equal so that it is all symmetrical. Once I get those both placed on there, I'll trim off the excess for the pinstripes, and then I will go on and trim off that extra vinyl. And I just carefully slide my X-Acto knife alongside of the pinstripes. If you want to be extra careful and make sure that you don't cut your pinstripes so that you do not need to relay them, you could always put a piece of tape down right on top of there and use that as a guide to cut, and then just carefully lift it back up so that you wouldn't lift your pinstripes up. Once my pinstripes are all on and my vinyl is all trimmed up, I decided to go in with a blue holographic striping tape to add on top of those black pinstripes. This was just a fun little pop of color that I thought gave the cup a lot more dimension and added a little bit of variety to it. This one I found on PDB Creative Studio, and they come in like a 3-pack, so you get 3 different sizes, and they are so easy to use and you don't have to turn on your Cricut or Silhouette to cut anything. I will have them linked down below along with everything else that I used in this tutorial. And once you get these all on, I just used some quick coat from Counterculture DIY to seal in all of my vinyl, and then went on with my epoxy, which I used artist resin from Counterculture as well, which will also be linked down below. I did add that black drip to the top. I will show you guys some fun final photos of that, but I don't include that in the tutorial at this time. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I cannot wait to see what other kind of XSplit designs that you all create.